Everyone's got to bob along to the music. And it is being recorded. And I will blackmail you with this video.
If we don't dance, do we fail?
Okay, let me turn the music off. Cool. Right, we're on the hour. So, is the screen share off? Are you just seeing me?
Yep.
Right. Now, there's 28 of us. There's 39 in our class. So we may see a few more people coming along. Isn't it exciting? We're all together. Wow. Isn't this good? Okay, let's start. Our online residential. Thank you all for coming along. And just want to start off by recognizing this is a really tough time for everyone. Oh, I've just got to ask people to go mute. I can try and mute you if I can see who's talking. If everyone goes mute just for a second, but we'll go back live on your mics in a little while. Okay, cool. So it's a tough time for everyone with the pandemic going on. So yeah, it's pretty rough for us all. So let's just recognize that during the next 2 days and try to make this a nice, gentle, stress-free environment. Now, I've designed today and tomorrow to be a mix of pre-recordings and live sessions. And it's just to relieve a bit of stress on you because I don't want you sat in front of the computer all day. And I recognize some of you are not always going to have easy access to your computer and to your internet. Other people might be using it or needing to use it. So that's why we've got a mix of things. Now, I'm just going to be quite quick in this section, maybe 5-10 minutes, just to give you a few bits of information. But basically, after about 5-10 minutes, we'll kind of go off air and we'll meet again at 12:30. And during that time, there are some pre-recorded videos to watch and an audio podcast to listen to. If you've previewed and pre-listened, great. You can just take some time off to chill. If you haven't, you need to kind of start pretty quickly and you might not be able to cram it all in. Prioritize the audio podcasts from Louis Theroux. So we'll come back at 12:30 after viewing those materials, and then we'll have a bit of discussion before lunch. Now, the Zoom room we're in is being recorded and it's open all day. Anytime we enter the room, any of us enter the room, it starts recording. So just be aware of that, but you're free to come into this room at any time. I'm not always going to be here, but the room will always be here. So don't treat this as a private space because the recordings will be made. Only I get to see the recordings, but just be aware of it. And I'm not going to share all of the recordings. I'll just share the bits that are scheduled with each of us. If you come into the room and no one's here and you're expecting people to be here, have a quick look at your itinerary just to figure out where we are, because we might be looking at pre-recordings or we might be in small groups. If we're scheduled to be in small groups, then just hang on in the room and I'll get to you. But yeah, don't panic. Everyone is still here, but they're just in different Zoom rooms, and I'll connect you up to one of those Zoom rooms. Now, we've got chat facility. What I'd ask you to do in the chat facility in Zoom is not use it for chat, really. Just use it to alert me to problems. It's because chat kind of operate, and don't worry for the people who are using it at the moment. And everyone's been really lovely and saying hi, and that's really great. And the problems with chat is it's like having side conversations. So when things are happening in the chat room and someone's talking, they can feel as though other people aren't really listening to them. And it's kind of hard to keep up with what people are saying in the Zoom room and then reading the chat as well. So try not to use chat unless you have to, but don't feel as though you're going to get punished for using chat. Okay. Next thing, technology. So we're going to rely a lot on technology, and it's inevitable that it will break down at some point today and tomorrow, particularly our internet connections. Don't panic. Remember, stress-free. We're going to be stress-free. Don't panic if your internet connection goes down. Our live sessions are basically you talking to each other, and I'm only going to be here as a facilitator for the discussions. I'm not going to be answering questions, except for our final session on day 2, which we're running as a question and answer session where I will be answering questions. All the other live sessions, I'm going to sit back and just let you talk to each other. And what that means is if your internet connection goes down, if you lose it, you'll just be losing the peer discussion, and it's quite easy to get that back. All you've got to do is link up with other people whose internet went down as well, organize your own time to chat about the materials that were shared during the residential. Does that make sense? So internet goes down, you can retrieve it. You've not missed anything important from me. You've just missed out on conversation with each other, and you can easily do that between now and week 13, which is the date for the submission of assessment 1. Our residential is all about assessment 1. Okay. That's kind of it. Also, we're not going to be in this large group all the time. There's 33 of us online at the moment. Sometimes we'll be in a big group, but I'm going to try and move us into smaller groups because it's easier for people to talk in smaller groups. So today I'll try and move you into small groups of about 5 just before the lunchtime session. And the only real time we'll be meeting again in the big groups is just in the welcome bits at the start of the day and bits at the end of the day. Okay, now we've got a little bit of time for some quick questions. If people have got some quick questions before we go offline, you either chill or catch up on the video and audio podcasts prior to 12:30. So any questions? Okay, it means we're all good, doesn't it? Does that mean we're all good? Fantastic. Well, you got the thumbs up. That's the other thing. I was going to tell you about this. I've got just a couple of minutes. I was just going to tell you about this in the next session when we are going to start talking to each other more. The online environment is wonderful at moments like this, but there are some big drawbacks. And one of the big drawbacks is nonverbal communication. Like, that's good because you can see that someone's saying everything's fine. So nice one, Michaela. That's good. But it's really hard to know that people are listening because we can't get that read on people. So when we're in discussions, what sometimes happens is someone talks, they stop talking, and then there's silence. And it's really awkward. It can be really awkward. You just think, oh my God, did I say something really stupid? And what's even worse is you say something, then there's silence, and the next person speaks on a completely unrelated topic, and you're sat there hanging, going, oh my God, what an idiot I was. It's really embarrassing, really uncomfortable, not good for our self-esteem. So once we get used to this online discussion, when someone speaks, the next person, try to chip in reasonably quickly. Don't leave them hanging, but refer to what that person just said. Even if it's loving what you just said there, really brilliant. Even if you weren't listening, for some reason, your audio went off, just chip in and go, that was brilliant. What you just said there was brilliant. But please, if someone says that to you, don't check to see that they were listening. Don't say, okay, can you repeat what I just said then? Just let it go, okay? Just let it go that someone was listening and they're being nice. Okay, that's all for me. It doesn't look as though we've got any questions. I'm going to hang around in the Zoom room.
Oh, I have a question, sorry.
Oh, yep.
What time did you say we're meeting back here?
12:30. Maybe I should tell you that, tell you the documents that are important to have up on your screen. So the itinerary, keep that on your screen as much as you can. So we've got 10:20 to 11:20 pre-recorded lectures that were my lectures. There's about 75 minutes of those, so you might have to put those on 1.5 speed.
That sound better, apparently. That 1.5 playback at 1.5 speed in YouTube.
Then there's an audio podcast. You can find that link in Moodle, and that's a 55-minute podcast of an interview with Louis Theroux. And we come back at 12:30 for a half-hour discussion where we talk mostly about the Louis Theroux podcast. Then we have lunch, and then we're back together at 2:00. That sound good?
Yes, thank you.
Sounds good.
Fantastic. Okay. Anyone who needs to go off and start doing the viewing and listening, head off now. I'm going to stick around here just in case there are little bits and pieces that people are worried about, and I'll just be here till 10:20. So see you all again. Please do come back. See you all again at 12:30, and I promise no more cheesy music. Okay, we're recording again. So, what's going to happen right now, if I can find my screen, you won't believe what I'm looking at. The nice thing I'm looking at is all your faces. All of the other little windows I've got open are just a bloody nightmare. Right, here we go. Can I just pretend my internet is frozen whilst I do this? There, got away with that, didn't I? Oh, God, my internet must have frozen. Sorry about that. Here we go. Right. So I want us to focus on the Louis Theroux podcast, the audio podcast. And I want you to think about the types of questions he asks. If you haven't listened to that podcast, they had some problems during the last session. Hopefully someone in your group will have, or people, a lot of us are quite familiar with Louis Theroux, particularly at the moment, because one of his documentaries is just going viral about the man who, with his tigers and lions and things. He's a journalist who's become very popular on the television. And there's something quite interesting about his interviewing style. So I want you to think about his interviewing style in terms of the types of questions he asks, how he works sensitively with people, because he often works on sensitive social issues. Also how he builds rapport with interviewees, and what you think are the pros and cons to his interviewing style. So basically have a talk about how he works as an interviewer. And I'll put you into groups of about five or six. And you can also, if you run out of gas on that one, talk about some of the content of the lecture material in terms of interview guides, developing interview questions, and conducting interviews. Okay, right. Does that sound okay for everybody? I think we're all back in the room. Hey, fantastic. I saw you there, Rachel. Welcome aboard. Okay, right. Now, I'm doing this really quickly and proficiently, but I just think all of your interconnections are really slow, so it looks as though this has taken me forever to do. Can we agree to that? I've got some nods. God, some people are stonewalling me, stonewalling me here. Good, you bloody work for it, Paul. You bloody work for it. Okay, here we go. Jesus Christ. Right, breakout rooms. So this is going to be a fairly random process. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. I'm actually putting you in with people who I consider to be the stars of the unit, like the real high flyers. So I'm going to put you individually in with the high flyers on this unit. Okay, right, here we go. All right, I'm about to send you off. I'll come and visit. If you want me there because you've got questions, you want me to come in, just send in a message via chat. Just say, Paul, can you pop along? I might be in another group having a listening to them, but I'll try and come along as soon as I can. We're going to have about 6 groups and half an hour to do this. 25 minutes to do this. When it gets to 1 o'clock, everyone should really think about lunch. So start disappearing for lunch. If you really get into this, you know, of course you can carry on. The room's still going to be available for you, but it's probably a good idea to go for lunch around about 1 o'clock, and then we'll come back at 2 and we'll meet all together in the room again. Okay, you ready to be dispersed to meet the high flyers on this unit, the people whose hopes and dreams we've invested in, because they're the ones who are going to get us a good reputation. Okay, I'll stop. Off you go. Here we go. Off you go. Up. Nothing happened, did it? Oh, there you go. You're all disappearing. I haven't deleted you all, have I? Oh, you poor buggers. You're stuck in a room with me. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Sorry to drag you away from your groups. I visited all groups and it's so frustrating my end because the discussions, exception of group 1, it's a private joke. The discussions are amazing. Group 1 had the insolence of having their great discussion just before I arrived and then decided to practice meditation whilst I was there. But it was fantastic. Each discussion was so good. Now we're going to be in one big group. We're all coming back. There's 31 of us who've lasted the day. And because we're in a big group, it's harder to manage. You're either all going to sit in silence and just read each other's minds, because that's what us psychologists do, eh? Or we're all going to try and speak and all of our mics open. So hopefully somewhere in between. And what we might have to do, if you have on your Zoom toolbar, raise hand. Do you have that facility on your Zoom?
What?
Oh, we've got one who has literally raised both hands.
Yeah, I'm with Casey.
So we've got, Kim's got a thumbs up. Oh, okay, tell you what, sometimes you'll get, oh, yep, we've got thumbs up, thumbs up. Do it old style. If you haven't got it, do it old style. And old style is like waving because you want to get in. So if someone's speaking and you want to get in, have a wave and I'll try my best to facilitate, or put up your little hands up and I'll spot it and I'll try and keep control of things. So we've got half an hour and really just want to see what you were talking about and what things you're going to carry with you from today into tomorrow in terms of how to conduct an interview. What have you learned? So over to you. Let's go for about 20 minutes on this, and 25 minutes. I'll sum up at the end.
One thing that came up in our group was the question C about the ethical dilemmas of accuracy and transparency. Can you possibly elaborate on that for us at all, Paul, please?
No, I can't.
In our group, we had a good chat about that. And we were talking about the ethics around how you, I guess, not only collect people's information, but it's a big responsibility to also represent that information fairly and accurately and in accordance with, I guess, you know, the spirit of researching and gathering information, because at the end of the day, you could hurt someone from misrepresenting what they've said or the information they provided. You could affect the way resources are distributed through social systems, like public monies to different resources that are available to people in social support networks maybe. You could impact the way a group is seen or perceived by the wider social demographics. So I guess they were some of the things I think that we were discussing.
Our group was the same. Yeah, being conscious of how we represent the interviewee and the information that they provide. Being conscious of not doing harm.
Yeah, we spoke about mandatory reporting and professional boundaries and duty of care to make sure like the client's not going to go self-harm or go hurt somebody else.
That's actually similar to what we were talking about. We sort of got into a bit of a conversation about whether we're talking specifically about sort of when we become psychologists and the difference between that and a qualitative research project.
Yeah, we sort of did that as well, David, in our little group.
I didn't
What did you
actually
guys come to in that?
interpret the
like the accuracy in that way. So that's really good. Thank you, everyone, for that.
We were also talking about the transparency and the accuracy. So when you're conducting the interview, being honest about what you're researching, what you're exploring, and not misleading the interviewee, so that they know what areas you're looking into, and not sort of misleading them in a way to to trip them up and get different information that maybe they didn't want to share.
I think the dilemma with the ethical stuff as well is, like you guys were saying, the participant distress. So if you're asking questions that's going to make them stressed, then we have to be ethical in the way that we approach those sort of questions. So you guys are storming my brain. Thank you.
Yeah, and even the ethics application, you don't want to go too far out of that either.
One of the ethical dilemmas could be going in there with a planned agenda. I think from that the bad interviewing technique video that we watched, I think she had an agenda already in her mind before she went in. So that could be an ethical dilemma for everyone.
So I think making your I guess how you research, the questions you ask, the way you did it, the context you did it in, making recordings or whatever available to the research community without breaching privacy, of course, but making the methods you used and maybe the questions you asked available for transparency, to make sure that you can be scrutinized and your research is being held to a standard. I think we've all seen those researchers who have been caught out doing things unethically, or they've misrepresented their findings, and it's the kind of dramas it causes. So I think it also adds to your credibility if you're being transparent without breaching privacy, of course.
David, you had your thumb up. Were you trying to get in, or was that a mistake?
Just supporting everyone.
Oh, thanks. I really like what Kim said just before as well about not branching too far from what you've been approved for ethically, because then your research could be wasted. It's not able to be used if you've gone outside of that scope.
Yeah, I think in regards to black and white ethical accuracy is just quoting the documentary podcast that we listen to, which is pretty much leaving your values at the door to be objective, like Paul said, because the greatest ethical thing you're going to come across is having a battle of values in an interview, which kind of defeats the purpose of interviewing someone qualitatively. So yeah, that's just something we kind of thought of as well.
That I was going to say that leads into the question that said, how should we interview people that we disagree with? So our group was all pretty much on the same page in this, that we're not there to persuade someone or convince them of anything. We're there to learn what they think and feel and their experiences, and it's not about our opinion or but we're not there to influence them. We're there to learn.
Yes, with our group, we also discussed a little bit about how it depends on the sort of interview you're doing. So if you are doing an interview, there's more of you're trying to see some sort of attitude or behaviour change because you're working with a client. It's a very different interview style than when you're working with someone as in a research setting, trying to get as much information from them as possible. So you approach it a little bit differently there as well.
This is a really good discussion. You're picking up some really interesting points here. There is that dilemma, isn't there, between doing what you told the ethics committee you're going to do and then allowing enough flexibility in the interview for participants to kind of find their own way of talking, and then also that odd thing about being yourself, but then not being yourself in terms of imposing your own values and judgments. The first one is really difficult to resolve. The second one is almost like the resolution seems to be be nice. You know, it's almost like be nice, be open-minded. So it's a case of, it's almost like saying, don't go in as yourself if you're not a nice person. But if you're a nice person, then be yourself and be open-minded. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
Would it be like just having a professional identity, separate from your like home life? You're just going into work prepared for what's going to go on, and just having that sort of attitude?
That's a really interesting point.
One of the things that we brought up and discussed was mindset, and the mindset that you're going in with and how that impacts the way you respond and react. It's a good one.
We just spoke about being completely neutral, or trying to remain neutral the whole time without giving opinions and stuff like that.
Blank canvas. Go in as blank canvas.
And that might take some time you spend preparing beforehand. Because if you go, oh yeah, I'll spend 2 minutes beforehand thinking about, okay, I'm going to go into this curious and stuff like that. But then if you've not really prepared yourself to be completely open-minded, and they say something that that really strikes you and catches you off guard, even if you don't say something like, oh, I can disagree with that, if your body language just straight away gives this impression that you think that's boring or something like that, that can pretty easily derail an interview.
That's what I spoke about as well, Paul. I show like every emotion on my face. So like, how does one refrain from doing that?
Can I respond to that? One of the things that I've just learned over the years is the first thing is I always try and prepare myself before a session. Let's call it an interview. So I don't sort of rush around, jump into the room and let's do the session. I need to mentally prepare myself. The other thing is, in terms of my morals and my values, they're always going to be my default responses. I'm always going to, and that's okay, but I'm there in a different role. I'm there and I don't have to take ownership of those things that I disagree with. I don't have to own them. I can just listen and ask questions and go along with what's happening and try and expand on that.
Do you know any poker players? There's got to be some YouTube videos. That sounds funny, right? But I mean that on a serious note, right? If you look at
I totally
poker
understand.
players, they go in there and they are just...
Yeah.
We've got stuff to learn from everyone, right? And I wonder if there's some YouTube videos on how they prepare themselves for a poker match. They can't give anything away.
Well, I think when Leonard said about being in a different role, that definitely resonated. So like, of course you're being yourself, but you're not. Like you're in a particular role to get information, and if you put your head in that mind space like you were talking about with your group, then you should be fine.
One other thing that came up in our group in relation to this is that we're all going to have an opinion on something, but we have to remember that we're there not for ourselves, we're there for them to hear their story, and we could actually learn something different regardless of what our opinion may or may not be. We could actually learn something from what the person interviewee has to say. So, keep an open mind, like we said before, because you never know what you might pick up.
Sorry, that's a nice response. Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that getting in the mindset beforehand, being prepared. I think just going to throw something out there. I think sometimes it's having a grounded, something that's physical or tangible for you that you have in the interview that is small, but actually as a go-to, acts as a reminder to drop into that neutral space. Because I think it's all very well when we prepare ourselves beforehand, but it's when they say that thing that, and I'll use the, all faggots should be, and that we lose it. And it's something that how we reground ourselves. And I think the other thing, Shannon, I'm a bit like you in terms of my face tends to tell everything. And I think it's about, those skills that sometimes when I've leaked and other people have seen my reaction, it's my ability to recognize that and then recover and say something like, oh, I'm sorry, I reckon I just was a bit surprised, and almost own it and reset again. I don't know, probably going off the wrong track now, but Just a
I
couple
think
of
I'm just going to try and cover it up with like what they were doing in the interview by saying like, not saying that I'm definitely going to do that, but just like, oh, thank you, that piece of information is interesting. You know what I mean? It might not be interesting in a good way to me, but it's still interesting for the topic.
Yeah, I think it's important not to forget a level of empathy as well, especially if your topic is sensitive. So, because we can get real stuck in, oh, my face and my body and my language should be like this, and then all the other person sees is like what the bad interview was in the example, which was just somebody going, yep, great, cool, yep, great, which can be quite cold for somebody who's talking about depression, for example. So, but yeah, it's all practice though, I think, and just being mindful, which is something Leonard brought up in our group chat as well. So.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just quickly, thinking of just empathizing, I don't know if someone's already said it or not, but empathizing with where a person's coming from. If you're stepping into an interview and you're doing something that's controversial to you, maybe considering how the world has shaped that person, or their experiences have shaped them and their belief systems, their views. If you're interviewing a low socioeconomic person who's come from abuses, backgrounds or whatever, they're going to have, potentially maybe very different outlook on the world to you. So I think maybe even empathizing with that first, that, whatever they say is going to be potentially a product of that. And that's where it's come from. And it's not necessarily an attack on your belief systems. It's a representation of their experience, and that, you need to empathize with that rather than see it as an attack on your own personal belief systems, potentially. Just, I don't know, maybe reaching out and creating that understanding in your own mind before you even step into the room. And I think there's some really good things that have been said so far, but that might be another addition.
That was good, Paul. I think you worded that really nice.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes knowing your topic and also having a really good think about what might some of my biases be towards that topic, and then looking at where they came from, like your own culture, how your values developed, and being really mindful about how other people's could be totally different for different reasons, and going into an interview being mindful with that. So then as soon as something pops up and you think, oh, hang on, that's not right, then hopefully you can get something to snap in your brain to go, hang on, that's not right in my culture, in my belief. That doesn't mean that what I believe in is totally right. Everyone's got their own, opinion, and they've been raised differently, and we need to respect that. And we're looking to hear their story. It's not about us.
And just a different way of doing the interviews, whether they're by Zoom or over the phone or by person, there's challenges in that itself. But I've also found, like with the older people, if you know the demographics of them, they like early morning or afternoon sort of interviewing.
I think it, like what everyone said, it all comes down to the mutual respect as well. So the respect, for the person that you're interviewing, and their respect towards you as well, and respecting where they may have come from or what the topic's about, whether it's going to be sensitive, and just showing, that mutual respect in the interview.
I was going to say as well, if you go in with the attitude of you're really going in to hear what they've got to say, you're not comparing it to what you know, you're listening and fascinated by what they've got to say, that might help you take a step back from emotional reactions.
I was going to say, if we don't have any expectations about what we're going to hear or find out, then nothing should surprise us too much. So, because then, if we're expecting something and they say something different, that's when we get that kind of shock that we have to try to cover up. But if we're not expecting anything at all, then anything they say is great to hear.
I honestly just think it's super simple. Like, it's not about us. It's not about our perceptions of things. It's not that hard to be nice. If we really want something, we know how to get it. And I honestly think it just takes that step back of just saying, whatever their views are about it, that if we allow them to open up and actually speak about it, then we're going to catch, more bees with honey than what we are with vinegar. So instead of having a thought of how am I going to adjust myself for them? How am I going to fix myself? How about looking into a situation and realizing it is like work? We don't take all of our drama, everything that's happening at home, whether you're fighting with your partner, your kids are running amok, and you don't take that all into work, and you don't, you know, like for me, I spent 13 years hairdressing. So I learned that from the moment I walked in the door, you dropped everything you had at home and you went in, you did your job. So people would come in regularly and you'd be like, hi, how you going? How's everything going? Oh, my life's shit and everything's happening. I can't do this and I can't do that. Instead of getting on the bandwagon with them, you sort of just go, oh, look, you know, I hope things are going to be better. I hope everything is going to be okay. After an hour and a half of them being in there and then getting them hair done, you actually feel like it's a relief and they let it go. So instead of looking at all the negatives that you could get from there or all the negatives about your own self, instead of, you know, like, not that I'm being judgmental, I'm just hearing as there is a lot of, how am I going to deal with this? How do I feel about that? How am I going to do this? Where it's really not about us, it's about them.
I keep thinking about Louis Theroux saying that disagreement is not actually a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And you know, and used in the right way, it can be an opening for people to share their views more, you know, in more detail. I think it's just in the way that you handle that difference in view and difference in opinion that it comes down to. You don't have to go into an interview being 100% neutral. I mean, none of us are Switzerland, and as Louis pointed out, people who are being interviewed on a sensitive topic generally know, are well aware that other people have a different opinion to what they do before they come into it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, and neutrality is not probably the be-all and end-all of being an interviewer.
I hate to... Oh, David, you got your hand up.
That was a clap.
Oh.
Paul, I just had one really important thing I just wanted to add. Years ago, I had an experience where I travelled overseas, and it's just to do, this is advice is just general in nature. We were going into a culture that was very, very different from our own in certain areas. And one of the things that was done to prepare us for that was in-depth cultural briefs from people who had been born and raised in those environments. And so some of the things that they tell you to expect are actually really, really shocking to us in comparison to what we experience today. Things that are completely normal to them, but you would go to jail for life here in Australia if you did. And so the way we were prepared for that, and it wasn't to do with interviewing, but it was to do with we were being immersed in this environment. And so the whole deal was we get cultural briefs, time to digest that and talk about it, and then how we're going to manage ourselves. So I just wanted to say, if anyone is ever doing any qualitative research in a sensitive area or a different culture, it would be my advice, because you don't always know what you're going to get sometimes, to go and actually get some cultural briefs around that particular group, so that you're mentally prepared if they see something that is completely shocking to you, like it's okay to sleep with children, or whatever it is that happens there, or violence against women is every day. You know what I mean? And it's actually part of the process and normal and how things work. And you might be absolutely mind blown by what they say. So it's preparing yourself, I think, is a really good one.
I need to come in. I need to come in because we're short of time and people might have arranged things at 4, but I don't really want to stop the conversation. This room will be open 24/7, but I promise I won't come in and spy on you, you know, if you're meeting late at night or something. But I want to sum up because we're getting to 4 o'clock. I think this is a really interesting discussion. Essentially, everyone is right because you'll find people who will agree with your position. The position about being neutral, about not giving too much away, controlling your facial expressions and so on, for those of you who are quite emotive, yep, people will agree with you there. They tend to sit in the middle ground of qualitative. I want to push you to the point that makes it very clear how qualitative is different from quantitative. So I want to push you to, it's not an extreme, but it's a big Q qualitative area, which basically tells you, don't hide your emotions, don't hide your opinions, be free in expressing them. And I think people have captured some of this just today. Be open-minded, non-judgmental, but that doesn't mean be empty-headed. You know, be naive to a certain degree, but draw on your experiences. The worst thing from my perspective about interviewers is when they go neutral, and it's like you're talking to a brick wall. People know that you're thinking unless they start to worry that you're not listening, you know. But if they think you're listening, and if you're not giving anything away, it's hard to tell sometimes. But if they think you're listening, they'll know that your head's churning, and they'll sometimes ask you, what do you think? If you just go neutral and say, it doesn't matter what I think, I'm here to interested in what you think, people start pulling back. We don't trust people who don't give a bit back, you know? So you find conversations can close down quite quickly when you feel there's nothing coming back at you, unless you've got this sort of interviewee who loves talking about themselves, and then they'll just talk on regardless. But generally, conversations are a two-way interaction. So I would say go in and don't mask anything. Don't mask your responses. Be professional in the sense of don't swear and all the rest of it. You know, just kind of have professional conduct, but don't go into that neutral gear. Be expressive. Have opinions, feel free to give your opinions, but it's kind of like having that, as kind of Louis Theroux does. He'll disagree with people, but not in a way that will close them down. And someone said about being respectful. It was, she's gone to a different place on my screen. I've forgotten who said it, but it was a really important point about being respectful. So we'll explore this a bit more tomorrow. What I'm suggesting to you is really interesting. You can hear psychology in you. You can hear your training in you, and your training is closed down, neutral, objective. You know, that's your training. That's your professional stance. What I'm saying is be open, be genuine, start up a dialogue with people, and show people you're really interested in what they have to say, but show you're listening and show that you're a human being that they're talking to. And I think that's what I want you to try tomorrow, partly because it'll just be much better experience for everyone, because we can relax, we can have some fun, and we can have a nice conversation. And I think it'll be less stressful for people than a conversation where you're constantly thinking about, what am I giving away? Do I look alarmed at this point? It's okay to be alarmed, because sometimes someone say, oh, you look a bit shocked when I said that. And you can say, yeah, I'm really shocked. I hadn't come across that. That's good. That's kind of good. So I know you all work in this mode. Perhaps you haven't thought about working in this mode in psychology. You probably work in this mode with your close friends and family. Anyway, I don't want to get into your family dynamics, but you know, it's probably these days, probably don't speak your mind if you're locked up for 6 months. You know what I mean? So I think tomorrow we're going to try and loosen up a little bit. Don't worry about showing our feelings. Get in touch with our feelings. I'm going to try that out. How does that sound? God, I went preachy, didn't I?
No, that's good.
But you're there, you know, it's a really interesting discussion. And by the way, none of you are wrong, because people will agree that that's the right way of doing it. I'm just saying, I want us to go further into big Q qualitative to get us completely out of that quantitative mode and be feeling open human beings. If you're a neo-Nazi, then put your mask on, you know. But if you're a nice person, and I think you're all nice people, be yourself, be nice, be respectful, be open. Now we're going to close down now. I think this has been a fantastic day. I can't quite get the sense of how it feels for you, but I'll kind of ask towards the end of tomorrow. But tomorrow we're going to have much more time in small groups. I'll just give you a quick, no, can I do this? We might go 2 minutes over, sorry. Tomorrow, oh God, what the hell, what am I doing? We've got 3 tasks. This is basically on one of the slides, in the PowerPoint slides, it's in one of the videos. Basically, I'm going to outline the assessment 1. That's in our pre-recorded video at the start. If you haven't watched that yet, start at 10 o'clock and watch there's 2 videos, and it'll take you about half an hour to watch them, and then our meeting will begin. For people who want to watch them before tomorrow because today was too tiring, or if you've already watched them, don't come along till 10:30. So we'll really start. I'll come online at 10:30, and then at 10:30, what we're going to do is essentially start focusing in on your individual interviews. I'm going to get you to organize yourself, organize your interview. I'm going to pair you off. You'll be in small groups, just twos, one-on-one. We're going to spend a lot of time one-on-one tomorrow. And there might be a group of 3 if we're an odd number. And you're going to start role-playing your interview, developing questions, and agreeing a schedule. And just quickly, so I'm throwing a lot at you here, for organizing the interview, and there's a sheet up on Moodle, which looks like this, which I'm hoping you can see. Can you see shared screen? Okay, so there's an interview slot preference sheet, which you can get from Moodle at the bottom of the section for our residential, week 5 residential, right at the bottom, interview slot preference. So have a look at that tonight, see what times suit you, what days suit you. When you meet your interviewee, who's also going to be your interviewer, because you're going to swap roles, see which times you prefer, and then by the end of tomorrow, post that to me with your preference from first to preference to least preference, preference number 10. And what I'll do is I'll try and organize this to get a time slot which is good for you. And if I can't, we'll figure something out. We've got a few weeks to do this, but I'd like us to do these interviews week 6 and week 7 after the non-Easter break. So that's what's ahead for tomorrow. And when you're in your groups of 2, you're going to start role playing, trying out your interview questions, and I'll be available to come in to tell you what you're doing wrong and tell you why I'm so much better at this than you are. And then at the end of the day, we're going to come back together as a big group. I actually thought we worked okay as a big group until I started talking. But I think we seem to work okay as a big group, seem to be okay. So tomorrow we'll have small group, then we'll be 1-to-1, and then we'll be a large group. And I'm now going to go and have a drink of water. And thank you so much for being engaged today. It's absolutely brilliant. Given all that's going on in the world, I really appreciate you finding this time to join us. The other thing we'll do tomorrow is see if we can keep this going. Find ways that we can keep these discussions going beyond the residential, because I think they're fantastic. I should stop now. I don't know how to stop. I have no off button. You just have to literally leave the room. I don't have pause.
Okay, if we need to, we'll commit mutiny tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Paul.
Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Sleep well.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, you can't get out?
Yeah, because I'm in your screen.
Oh, are you?
I am. I've been in there the whole time. That's why I couldn't see everybody, but I was like, I'll just wait.
Oh, what have I done to you? I'm so
Don't
sorry.
worry, I didn't click on anything.
Yeah,
Right.
I can't get out
Your
either.
browsing history.
Right, we're here for the long run then. So
It's going to be overnight now.
yeah, pretty much.
I will
Right.
turn you off.
Right, I'll tell you what. I'll end the meeting. Just see if there's anyone who wanted to stop for a quick chat. Tell you what, I'll end the meeting right now.
Okay.
And then if you wanted, I'll just be around for 10 minutes just to see if anyone wanted any concerns before we start tomorrow. So I'll end now and then come back in, and then hopefully if that will release you if you're here under duress.
Thanks, Paul.
Here we go. See you tomorrow.
Bye.